Miss Chrina, so we are very interested to know about Rohei Foundation. Can you please tell us what is Rohei Foundation?
Well, maybe I can share a little bit about the work that we do as an organization, as a non-profit organization here in the Philippines. We really started with the goal of really wanting to advocate for adoption and bring awareness and hopefully be able to see more families open up their hearts and their homes to adoption and foster care. And so we're a licensed child placement agency, which means that you can actually apply to become an adoptive parent or get licensed as a foster parent through us. But we also have other programs around the advocacy work that we do. We do a lot of work with volunteers and just helping to create a culture in the Philippines that celebrates adoption and family-based care. And also, we have other programs that serve vulnerable women, pregnant women in crisis, yung mga nanay na medyo at risk for sometimes selling their babies, abandoning their babies, trafficking their children through illegal platforms, especially on Facebook now, maraming mga ganyan na nangyayari na it's really terrible to think about what happens to a child who gets trafficked or sold online. But unfortunately, it's very common. So we have a Facebook page called Tulong Kay Nanay, which is just a great resource if you know moms na who need help. That's where they could go. So we help both pregnant women in crisis, so we prevent a child from becoming an orphan in the first place. And then we have orphan care programs around adoption and foster care.
I see. Can you tell us, Miss Chrina, what's the story behind Rohei Foundation? How did it start?
Well, this all started really shortly after I lost my first child. After losing my first child, I realized that my arms weren't just empty, although they felt empty, but my arms were actually available. And while I was grieving the loss of the child that I lost through stillbirth, I realized that there are children who are grieving the loss of their parents. Children in children's homes without parents to hold them, to love them, to care for them. And so that reality really got me started into looking into this social issue here in the Philippines and discovering that there is actually a lot that could still be done. And that's really where the work of Rohei Foundation started, working with families.
Minsan kasi kung ano talaga yung nararamdaman natin, yung wala tayo, gusto nating maramdaman ng mas marami. I mean, di ba yung loss, kasi mahirap siya. So gusto nating iparamdam yung love doon naman sa mga nangangailangan din.
Right, yeah. So I think just that awareness, di ba?
What is the difference between a child placement agency and an adoption agency?
Nothing. Here in the Philippines, we call them child placement agencies or CPAs. So the way it works is there is now the newly established National Authority for Childcare, which is a quasi-judicial agency under DSWD. NACC, as they call it, is in charge for facilitating everything that relates to domestic adoption. And alongside them, there are private agencies, which we call child placement agencies, that can help facilitate the applications of adoptive parents. So it is what other people might call an adoption agency. So generally, it's the same, but I guess here in the Philippines, we call them CPAs instead of adoption agency.
In your social media, madalas nakikita namin yung mga salitang family is the answer and think generation. So ano po bang ibig sabihin nito?
Okay, yeah, I think we really care a lot about families and generations. When you say family is the answer, we use that. That's what our podcast is called. I host a podcast called Family is the Answer, and a lot of our forums that help raise awareness for how to get involved and how to adopt and foster in the Philippines. We call it Family is the Answer. And it's really designed to help reframe our minds to realize that the answer is really family. It's not orphanages, it's not institutional care. That's not the finish line for a vulnerable child or an orphan child. That it's simply not enough. It's good, we need it right now in our system, but it's just not enough. A child is not, hasn't been fully taken care of, their needs haven't fully been met until they've been in a family. So really, family is the answer to the orphan crisis. And we say think generations because, when we meet with families, they say, we didn't realize that when we brought this child into our family, that the impact wasn't just on him or on her, that it was generational impact. That not only was I able to give this child a loving home, but I've given this child's children and their children's children and generations after that are transformed because of that step that I took to adopt this child and bring them into my family. If you think about it, yung buong family tree mo gets altered when you adopt. And when you bring a child in, it's like, when we adopted my daughter Chloe, it was saying, Chloe, everything I have is yours. And we bring you into everything that our family is. Everything that is Henson, everything that is Cuna for me, you inherit all of that. And it doesn't matter what your background is or your DNA or your past. It doesn't matter. But that's who you are now. And generations are now defined by that. So sometimes we think, ano lang, one child is affected. Actually, no, you're actually really able to impact generations when you adopt and when you foster children.
Were there any unforgettable adoption stories that you encountered, and can you share them with us?
Wow, so many. I think every adoption story to me moves me in a different way. But one that we love to share is about this mom who was just following our social media posts. And because of that, from a place of not really caring too much about adoption, or hindi naman siya interested masyado in adopting at that time, her mind just kind of opened up to it. And when she was reaching out to us and started to ask us questions on social media, and 9 months later, she actually adopted a child. I remember the volunteer who created that post on social media. I was telling them, can you imagine that your school internship, or I think it was, whatever it was, resulted in a child finding a family? And sometimes it takes so little to advocate for it and to make a difference in the life of a child. Parang, isip mo, nag-graphic design lang siya, or, you just posted and managed her social media and it was able to result in that. And I think that it just goes to show that with whatever we have, we can all do something. Just the power of inspiring stories. I mean, every story is just unique in its own ways.
Ganda naman nun. Sobrang maliit lang na bagay, pero a big impact.
Yeah, so we always saying small act, big impact. Sometimes you think that we have so many social media volunteers that, they think, oh, I'm just making posts. No, you're not making posts. You're fighting for every child that's sitting in a children's home today that needs a family. You're not just making posts. You're not just doing IG stories. You're not just collating content. You're fighting for the needs of a child who needs a family. And it can do that. Yeah, so I think that's something that all of us can do. Yeah. We all have the capacity to do that.
Eto, marami to. What are the typical misconceptions about adoption, and how do you and Rohei intend to change?
One, that there's a lot of paperwork and that it's just a long, lengthy process. Thankfully, because of the new law, actually, while there still is some paperwork, there still is some administrative process to it, it's not as daunting as it was before. I think there's been a lot of changes made at the government level to help make adoption more accessible. It's scary, but it's not as scary as it was before. I think a lot of the fears that families have around adopting are really because they've never been in contact with children in children's homes. So we encourage families to go and visit the children's home, see that the kids are normal. They're normal kids, they're friendly kids, they all need family, they all need love. And sometimes the picture we have of the child that would get matched to us or the child we might adopt is really not an accurate picture, more based on fear and maybe our own apprehensions about it. It's not really based on truth. So I think we're really working towards building a culture where adoption can be celebrated, working with the media, working with advocates, working with families to educate their children, teachers to have better conversations about this in school with the students and better equip them to be more welcoming, be more celebratory around the topic of adoption instead of treating it like it's so awkward or like something that's taboo, right? And can't be talked about.
How can people help or play a part in your foundation?
Well, I think we're here to really serve families that are interested. We so encourage families to be licensed also as foster families. Some people say, I would help if there was a child that you gave me today. Yes, I would help. Pero hindi sila mag-a-apply ng license or, to get processed for adoption. We say, well, the first step actually is to get a license so that if there was a child who needed a family, legally, you would be able to take in that child and you would have guardianship over that child. And that would be protection for you and protection for the child as well. So I think we're here to kind of equip families who are interested, but also we have so many volunteer opportunities because like I said, small act, big impact. Everybody has something to give. Just today we got an email from an accountant who said, hey, can I volunteer? Do you need help with accounting? And we said, yes, of course, we need help with the finance, accounting, things like that. Everybody can do something. Sometimes we'll get some requests like that and we'll say, you know what, we will make space for everyone to have an opportunity and to be able to know that in their own little way they can contribute into bringing awareness around this issue and fighting for the orphan crisis to come to an end in the Philippines.
So, paano, Miss Chrina, like mag-volunteer? Ano yung mga specific na pwede nilang gawin or ano yung gagawin nila talaga?
Yeah, I think we encourage them. We have, to get in touch with us. And then what we really do is we get to know each person who wants to volunteer to say, what are your skills? Because we don't want to ask you to do something that you're not skilled at. I believe that every person has skills and has something that they can offer that can help us solve this problem together. It's a crisis, not just in the Philippines. It's globally we're facing this issue where institutional care has kind of overshadowed family-based care. We need to shift the attention back to family-based care. So everybody has something that they can contribute, and sometimes it's just using your social media. At the very least, we say, hey, could you maybe share the content, or maybe can you help us research and find content that we can share with our families? The possibilities are endless, I think, on ways that people could get involved and to support and fund the work that we do. I mean, everything makes a difference.
Miss Chrina, kaya nabanggit mo na yung about fostering. So, paano naman? Like, may mga nanonood tayo na interested sila to apply. Paano yung process on getting license?
I think the first step would be to attend a forum. So every month we have at least one forum. Rohei Foundation has at least one forum, which is really all the information. We'll walk you through the whole process, and it's actually one of the prerequisites, one of the requirements. And that would be there. And then after that, it's pretty much paperwork. It's an application form, getting some requirements like medical clearance and NBI clearance, things like that. Some simple requirements, submitting the documents to us, and some interviews with our social worker. And that's pretty much the application process for getting a license. And so our social workers will walk you through it. All of that information. I think the best place to go, the first stop should really be a forum. And we have those, it's online, it's once a month, and the schedule is always on our social media accounts and our website.
So ito na nga, Miss Chrina. Invite naman natin yung mga audience natin to join and be part of the Rohei Foundation.
All right. Well, I think we just invite everyone to connect with us. I think the best way to stay connected is really on our social media platforms and through our website, where you can really hopefully learn more about the work that we do and see if you want to partner with us in funding the work that we do, or if you want to partner with us as a volunteer in helping us advocate for this cause. Hopefully our resources are able to help you do that. Or if you have families that you would like to connect with us that are in need of community, we have lots of adoptive family communities and adoptee communities, because we all need each other. Yes. So do reach out to us. We hope to just stay in touch with all the families that are watching.
Yes, and ilalagay na lang namin dito yung kanilang social media
Yes.
accounts. Ayan.